As a fan of traditional single-player experiences, it seems like Japan will have to carry the gaming landscape in 2026 and maybe finally bring this generation to the level it should be. No doubt, the all-dominating game will be GTA 6, and live service giants like Fortnite will continue to make the biggest revenue. However, beyond these exceptions at the very top, chasing live service trends and investing into focus-tested AAA titles which take more than half a decade to develop has become unsustainable, especially in Western countries, as proven by the never-ending wave of studio shutdowns. Feel free to call me a biased weeb, but Japan seems to have found a much better rhythm for releasing a wide variety of mid-budget games on top of AAA projects that actually come out in a functioning state. I was a little down on 2025, but 2026 is shaping up to be a killer year again. In this video, I will discuss the, in my opinion, most promising upcoming releases, but of course don't hesitate to post what's on your radar down below. After all, it's all about sharing recommendations. Capcom might have a field day in 2026, with multiple big productions that we know of. Resident Evil 9 will be the big one, and I'm quite confident that they could deliver, because I've already got to play the demo last year. Admittedly, the series has been treading water a bit since it took a new direction back in 2017. In the demo, once again, there was your small labyrinth area where yet another invincible stalker tries to hinder your progression while you solve puzzles and look for keys. However, Requiem seems to be a true next generation take on the formula. Even though I played it in the sterile environment of a convention, it still gave me a few scares, and judging by the colleagues besides me, I wasn't alone. One major thing that differentiates this title from the previous one seems to be a new focus on light and darkness, which I found pretty effective. Some areas are pitch black, but without being obtuse, and the monster will be heard by turning on the light in a room. Also, the lighting creates a pretty distinct visual identity. It's the first time that RE7 director Koji Nakanishi returns to make a mainline title. The second half of 7 kind of fell apart after an incredibly strong start, so Requiem seems like the perfect chance to bring this original vision for 7 to a close. It's been some time since we've gotten a solid sci-fi shooter from Japan, so my hopes are high for Pragmata from Capcom. This seems to be a title that might have been in development hell since it was one of the first games announced for the PS5 in 2020. However, judging by Capcom's current output, I'm confident that they deliver a polished campaign. It's funny, I've seen lots of apathy towards the game, because it actually comes with an experimental combat system which mixes shooting with quick puzzle solving. I guess when the same people yearn for new IPs and new franchises, they just mean Assassin's Creed and Uncharted with a different story. But I welcome big publishers taking a risk with a clear vision. Now, I'm not so sure about the story. I could be wrong, but anything with a child side character usually tries a bit too hard to be a tearjerker down the line, but we'll see. On the other hand, I'm conflicted about Onimusha, especially after laying hands on the game myself. A few years back, this would have been a welcome comeback, but these days we're not short on samurai games, whether open world ones or more straightforward titles like Nioh. I wish it followed up on Onimusha 3 with a more modern setting, but that didn't happen. Now, it could have stood out if it was following the old PS2 formula, which was a mixture of katana combat and exploring and puzzle solving of Resident Evil. And in fact, some news reported that Onimusha would not be going the Souls route according to Capcom. Well, that was a lie. I was flabbergasted by the demo, not because it was bad, but because it clearly wouldn't have existed without Souls. You've got your lock-on focused duels, boss arenas, and even the limited Estus flask. I guess one selling point compared to Nioh will be the higher production values and what seems to be a lower difficulty. Wishful thinking, but perhaps we might see first material for Okami 2, for which original director Hideki Kamiya has returned to Capcom. But the announcement at the end of 2024 was probably made shortly after the ink on the contract dried, so I assume it will be a while. The Yakuza team at SEGA truly deserves props for its crazy efficiency. They somehow managed to release a huge turn-based Yakuza RPG, a full-fledged pirate action title, and also Super Monkey Ball within like a year. Now their next IP has been revealed as Stranger Than Heaven. The combat seems to go for that early Yakuza style with real-time action. However, the setting apparently aims for an ambitious plot that spans multiple decades. Once again, it seems to have a strong and very distinct art direction and story backdrop not really found elsewhere. The only thing I worry about is the apparent focus on detective gameplay besides the combat. I wouldn't complain at all if this game had proper investigation gameplay. However, recent releases from SEGA and Atlus, including other detective games, often dumb down the investigations to the point that they play themselves. I really hope they don't go this route here. Only the remake Yakuza Kiwami 3 isn't blowing me away. The series is very iterative, using the same maps over and over. That's why the biggest leaps usually come with new generations of graphics. Conversely, this means that something like Yakuza 3, at least to me, is most interesting for its vibes that are unique to the PS3. If Kiwami 3 had been used to introduce a new engine, I would have been behind. Instead, it just looks like another Dragon Engine game. Whereas a character like Rikia still had a very distinct and somewhat cartoony appearance in the original, now he's just another actor scanned into the Dragon Engine. They also took out the revelation system responsible for many early Yakuza memes. Too bad. Either way, besides all that, somehow the Yakuza team still has the time to bring back Virtua Fighter, the grandfather of 3D fighting games. I have no qualms with this, but at this point I have accepted that I'm just not made for this genre. I can't get a grasp on the controls, no matter how long I try, so I can't really talk much about that. Which is kind of a shame, because I think that the genre has some of the most engaging aesthetics and gameplay, which also seems to be true for the flashy looking Marvel Fighting Souls, also coming this year. It might sound strange, but I really appreciate that this kind of game exists, frankly more than another Marvel open world title, even if it is near unplayable for me. One decent surprise was the return of Nioh. I wasn't a big fan of Rise of the Ronin, which combined Team Ninja's Souls-like combat with a Ubisoft-style open world, full of icon chasing and walking and talking sections. I preferred Nioh's tighter focus on the combat scenarios. So when they announced that Nioh 3 would be open world, I was hesitant, but the demo erased my fears. This seems to be Team Ninja's answer to Elden Ring, where the open world is more like a big labyrinth than a checklist. Team Ninja made like 6 Souls-likes already, but thankfully each title offers a unique spin, which seems like the smartest approach to the sequels. Use existing assets to make new titles with a different gameplay focus. Whereas Nioh 2 was all about demon transformations, this one, besides the open world, relies on switching between a samurai and a ninja mode on the fly, and so far the new flexibility does make it stand out. Castlevania might still be dead outside of re-releases, but it could be worse. If you didn't know, Bloodstained is a spiritual successor created by series veteran Koji Igarashi. In my book, the first game was easily on par with past efforts like Order of Ecclesia or Portrait of Ruin. It only suffered from a small Kickstarter budget. Now the sequel, Bloodstained Scarlet Engagement, looks much more refined in its visual style and production value. To the point that I thought that this was a new Castlevania from Konami when it was announced. As a Metroidvania style game, Bloodstained might now have to battle it out with Hollow Knight Silksong, which released to enormous hype in September of 2025. But thankfully the eager style is pretty different from other Metroidvania games, with a bigger focus on RPG elements among other things. I don't expect any burnout. One thing I didn't have on my bingo card last year was the announcement of Beast of Reincarnation, a big budget RPG from Game Freak, the developers of Pokémon, presented for current generation consoles. Considering that Pokémon has recently been known for extremely low production values, I don't think anyone expected a full-fledged action RPG from Game Freak, especially one that looks on par with clear inspirations like Sekiro or Nier Automata. Aside from the choppy frame rates, which is the only giveaway that this is the Pokémon team. Either way, I'm not sure whether I would have been interested in this title if it wasn't for the developer, but that alone certainly puts it on the map for me. It seems Suda51 is finally following up on Shadows of the Damned with a new IP called Romeo is a Dead Man. Despite being cheeky and misleading during the announcement trailer, I suspected that this would be a Suda aka Grasshopper game pretty early on, because it's very much in line with his very weird style of humor and punk aesthetics seen in his most recent games. I don't think he will ever produce anything that will reach his early efforts, like Killer 7 or No More Heroes for me personally, and it's also clear that this will not be a game with high ratings. The gameplay doesn't look very smooth, but this might deliver the kind of wild and wacky button mashing action that has been absent for a little too long. Even though Atlus always takes their time with new mainline titles of a franchise, they still are a powerhouse these days. I mean, in 2024 we got Metaphor, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance and Persona 3 Reload. And now Persona 4 Arise is on the way too. To be fair, there have been so many re-releases of Persona 3 and 4 at this point, they are so easily accessible, so I couldn't care less about this one, but I guess they know that, since this will get a much bigger visual overhaul than Persona 3. And I say overhaul instead of improvement, because there's still a certain charm to its original PS2 era art direction, and the trailer of the remake looked a little wonky when it comes to lighting. Speaking of JRPG remakes, there will be yet another version of Dragon Quest VII. I don't know who has the time to replay these over 100-hour long Dragon Quest games over and over, but it looks great. Here's a hot take: I wasn't ever too fond of the HD 2D look from Square Enix. It looks nice in stills and trailers, but during gameplay I often found the monotone textures and garish color choices off-putting. This new style for Dragon Quest VII now further cements this for me. This method of scanning real-life figurines and dioramas looks much superior to me. Usually I was against remakes of certain Square classics such as Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI, because the specific art direction made for Super Nintendo created a lot of its appeal. But if they really have to remake something like Chrono Trigger, hopefully they'd create graphics comparable to Dragon Quest VII reimagined. Going back to SEGA, last year saw the return of Shinobi, but there are still a few comebacks that they've announced, including Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi. There hasn't been much footage of Jet Set Radio, but it seems to stay true to its roots, only improving the graphics, which wouldn't be a bad thing, because there aren't many games like it, mixing skating gameplay with cel-shaded adventuring. Crazy Taxi could be an engaging arcade racer, the old arcade machine remains a classic. As a live service title though, I don't think this will be something I'll be interested in. I guess it makes sense for its arcade roots, but I would have preferred something that was developed with a dedicated single player mode first. Another welcome return is Fatal Frame 2. The series has always been niche, but the second game deserved to be named among the strongest Resident Evil clones of its era. It follows the formula of investigating spooky mansions full of abstruse puzzles, but it's a rare case where you don't fight any sort of mutants. Instead, stoic supermodels have to catch spirits with a magical camera. There are problems that got really bad in later titles, such as an abundance of meaningless backtracking, but the second game had a tightly designed campaign with a well-told story about a cursed village stuck in time. It's engaging to explore and slowly fall into this abyss of evil. By the way, this is the second remake of this game. Europe and Japan already had a Wii remaster, but now they are remaking the graphics all over again, which seems a little redundant. I'm of the opinion that we don't need to remake everything over and over again, and that a bigger push for official emulation would make for much better preservation. Either way, it's good that this title will be more easily accessible again, even if this big overhaul wasn't necessary. And that's it for me. If you've watched this far, again, don't hesitate to post the games you are looking forward to, whether I've missed anything or whether or not you've been put off by all these weeb games. Actually, there are more potentially promising titles on the horizon, like Tales of Alias, which is Square Enix's clone of old school Zelda, but to me most of these HD pixel games never really landed. I'm also hoping to see more of the new game by Shadow of the Colossus creator Fumito Ueda that's being funded by Epic Games, but realistically it could still be years out. There might also still be big Nintendo titles which the company is still keeping close to its chest. Either way, this all underlines for me that the potential for 2026 feels bigger than it's been in a long while, even if certain other parts of the industry are kind of eating themselves right now. Anyway, if you found any of this insightful, liking or sharing this video would be highly appreciated. Thanks for watching.